Today's topic is about feedback. It is funny because every time when I invite somebody for this kind of webinar, this kind of workshop, if I do it in public or internally, always I have at least one person who says, yeah, it's never too much to talk about feedback. And actually, I don't know if it makes me really happy, because it means we are good in talking and we want to talk about feedback, but we still struggle with implementing it. So I think some nice inspiration will be given today. But before we jump in, just a couple words about our company. We have a holistic approach regarding the product development. It's from code to coaching. We say 360 degrees from code to coaching. The company, Close Brothers, it is a German-Polish software house founded in 2007. So we have more than 15 years of experience. And even if you see the two brothers, the two founders, we are a team of around 30 software craftspeople. So it is brother, but I would say it's a closer family. And as we consider it holistically, we also provide different kind of trainings, also certified trainings. We provide agile training certified by Scrum Alliance. And we have our offices in Bielefeld, Berlin, and Wrocław. Okay, so let's start with a story. In one of my previous teams, in one of my previous companies, we had a very important project that had to be deployed to customers. And 2 or 3 iterations before the final deployment, we hired a new software developer. It was a lady. She was a front-end developer, and she was great at communication skills. And that's why we decided that she will make the final demo, the final review for customers and also for board of directors. As I said, it was an important project. And the result was great. The product was deployed successfully, on time, on budget, without major bugs. And even we got a letter from the direction. It was a very, very nice letter to highlight that, yeah, we had a very, very successful product deployment. And also in this letter, directors praised the lady who presented the final demo. And we might say, yeah, it's nice to have a letter, such kind of letters from directors. You don't have it every day. But very quickly, we discovered that it's actually a problem, because some of developers who worked since the very beginning on the project, they felt even offended because the lady who presented was named, but they weren't named. And yeah, it was actually a problem. And yeah, but why it is problem? There is something positive that happens, and yeah, some people felt offended. So the reason is that we all want to receive regular feedback, but we aren't pros at giving it to others. And if I look for statistics to prepare this webinar, I found some interesting statistics. They say that 65% of employees desire more feedback. Can you imagine? 65% is more than a half of people desire more feedback. And also 69% of employees would willing work harder if they received more recognition through feedback. Also, it's almost 15% people might stay longer in the company thanks to regular feedback. And at the very end, 98% of employees will disengage sooner or later from work when they receive little or no feedback. So this is very, very 98%, it's a huge number of people. Almost everyone needs to get regular feedback. Yeah, there is no silver bullet, of course, but there are some rules worth applying. So I will share some good practices that work, at least in my teams, in my context. First of all, there are two types of feedback, and I would want to highlight the word constructive, because the positive feedback, of course, everyone knows that there is something like positive feedback, but quite often we say that the opposite is negative or even corrective feedback. I highlight the word constructive because the word matters. Even if the negative feedback exists, I would say it's rather for some very tight number of cases. For example, if an employee comes and says, I'm leaving, this is a negative feedback because you won't do anything now. But if you want to change something, if something has happened in daily work, you want to do something positive out of that. That's why please don't use the word negative if you want to build something positive on the situation that just has happened. The first question is why we want to give a feedback. And if you play Scrabble, you might say that for this very short question, why, you get 12 points. It means that it is really one of the most important questions, the why. So why do we give a positive feedback? We give it to thank for something that has happened, for something positive that has happened. We give it to praise, to encourage, and also to empower. Contrary to that, constructive feedback is to name a problem. Something has happened, and you, when giving a constructive feedback, you want to name a problem, to define a goal, what we should do with this current situation, to discuss options, and also to encourage. That's why, one more time, I highlight the word constructive and not negative. And if you look closer, the positive feedback is focused on the past, because something positive has happened and you just want to highlight it by thanking and praising for something that just happened. And the constructive feedback is focused on the future. So based on the current situation that we have today, we might do something that will change it in the future. That's why when giving a constructive feedback, you become a kind of mentor of this change. So you should be the one who will support the person and who will encourage to change it in the future. And then the second question, what, as you see, less points, but it still means that it's very, very important question. In the positive feedback, of course, you should say, what did you observe? What was the effort? Honestly, I don't really like to give positive feedback for results. I consider that results are just the consequence of our effort. That's why I always prefer to give positive feedback for the effort and not for the results. And also in this feedback, I highlight how it improves cooperation, product, or project, and especially how it improves our cooperation, because the final goal is to improve it also in the future. And yeah, even if it is just a short conversation, at the end, you always need to say awesome, great, wonderful, or something to highlight that it was really something that you appreciate. The constructive feedback, the content, of course, what did they observe? Why does it disturb our cooperation, product, and project? And the options for the future. This is the content that should be in the constructive feedback. Of course, you might say that I don't say anything about emotions. Yeah, and there's also a possible path how we can change the situation in the future. Regarding emotions that often happen especially in constructive feedback, if you feel angry, if you feel sad, of course, you can name your emotions. But once the feedback culture in your company, in your team is fully implemented, it's always easier to maintain the emotional distance. Because when we know that, okay, this situation is a starting point for something better, really you don't need to feel angry, because it's a nice opportunity to do something better in the future. When we should give it? The positive feedback should be given as often as possible, especially when you saw an effort, an innovation, an interesting experiment, some kind of proposal. You can give such kind of positive feedback. When you want to empower, especially if you have a young developer in the team, it's always nice to reinforce this person with positive feedback. It will make his first weeks much easier. And also, I like to give positive feedbacks every time at the end of work done, independently of result. This is very important, because even if we failed our sprint or the feature doesn't work as it should, tomorrow we will start again a new feature, a new story, a new project. So we need to have this positive energy for the start. The constructive feedback, you need to give it as often as needed, and when values or agreements have been violated. And also, no self-correction has occurred. So you better don't give constructive feedback immediately after something has happened. It's always better to give a space, to wait a little, because it might be that this person will just come to you and explain something that has happened. So it's always nice to give a time space. Also, it helps to decrease your potential negative emotions. How to give it a feedback? Well, I like to give positive feedback in public if it is possible, inside team, or even in public if we meet with larger group of people. And I like to focus on the effort, but without exaggeration. If we are talking about implementation of feedback culture, it means that the feedback should be something really regular. So if you will exaggerate, you will decrease the final effect of the feedback. And why am I saying that in public it's better? First, it's stronger if you give a positive feedback in public, but also to other people, it's a nice sign. It's like a GPS information. Okay, if you go if you will take this path in the future, also you might receive such kind of feedback. So it's also a nice information about your standards. If you want to implement a standard, focus with positive feedback on somebody who is already there. And if the positive feedback is not really natural in your teams, you can see that when giving it, somebody will come to you and say, hey, but what do you want from me? It's not usual for people to receive regular positive feedback. So people might say, hey, but if you say that to me, maybe you want something. And the point is that you don't need to have expectations. It's just to close a positive situation in the past without any expectation. So don't expect anything and you will get everything. This always works. Constructive feedback, of course, you never give it in public. It is an intimate situation. You should do it only on one-on-one. In a friendly atmosphere, as I said, it's a constructive. So even if this person is angry or sad, you already see this future. So you should create this friendly atmosphere and objectively, impartially, and future-oriented. I like the story of diamonds because, as we saw on the statistics, when you give feedback, it's like giving diamonds. So you have an unlimited number of diamonds. You are free to spread it. And yeah, you might say a positive feedback is a diamond, of course, but a constructive feedback is just a stone. But when you look closer, this stone, this particular stone that you see on the screen, is called carbonado. It's a black diamond, and on the earth, it was found only in Brazil and in Central Africa. So you can imagine how precious is this black diamond. Hi, Patrick. And they also say that black diamonds came to the earth as a part of meteorite, and they were created as a side effect of a supernova explosion. So the constructive feedback is really something really, really precious because it is an opportunity to change situation in the future. So you should consider, and the person who receives the constructive feedback should consider that, okay, it's a starting point for something new. You even might buy, there are cheap diamonds in acryl. You might buy transparent and black. And when giving positive or constructive feedback, you can just give this acryl diamond and say, hey, I've got the black diamond for you. Let's discuss something. It will also be easier for you to keep your emotions. Some tips and tricks. Honestly, I never saw a team, a company where a kudos system were implemented correctly. Very often we saw walls for kudos, but yeah, it never really worked. For me, feedback should be natural and it should be direct. It is something that happens between you and the person. So it should be really, really natural. And each conversation is much better than any kind of kudos. Imagine the C-level, your boss will come to you and say, hey, you got a very good presentation last week. I really liked it. Look how strong it is. It's much better than just post it on a wall. When I work with teams, each Friday at the very end of work, I really like to ask people, hey, what are you proud of? It's a tricky one because sometimes I really don't know what kind of positive feedback I could give to somebody. But when asking, what are you proud of for this week? What have you learned something? What have you learned? What kind of problem have you solved? What kind of difficult situation have you faced? People will start to see their successes even if the whole sprint was unsuccessful. Always something positive has happened. And I like to ask these kind of questions each Friday just before the weekend, because it is a nice stop of the professional context and very nice beginning of the weekend. And even if in the beginning this kind of question will be difficult to answer, please try to do it in your teams, and you will see that it will be amazing. People will start to smile independently of the situation, and they will see their success by themselves. And also, it will be a lesson for you in the future, for what kind of situation you might give a positive feedback. You will learn just by asking this question. Yeah, in some feedback systems, they say about the sandwich rule. So when you give a constructive feedback, you need to start with something positive, give the real meat, and end up also with something positive. I don't like this rule because honestly, the person whom you give the feedback won't understand correctly if it is a positive or constructive feedback. So I'm not very enthusiastic about the sandwich rule. However, in the professional context, a good ratio of feedback is at least 3 positive feedbacks before you give any constructive feedback. So if you need to give a constructive feedback to somebody, please ask yourself, is this person confident enough? Did I give enough of positive feedback before just to let this person receive this constructive feedback easier? And in personal life, this ratio should be 5:1. So if you want to ask somebody to change something, if you want to encourage somebody to change something, please focus first on positive feedback whenever you can. Of course, on other kind of situations, it will help this person to consider the problem and not to be evaluated as herself. So 3 positive feedbacks, at least 3 positive feedbacks in professional context, and at least 5 in personal context before you want to give a constructive feedback. So as you can see, the positive feedback should be a rule and constructive feedback should be an exception rather. Yeah, to conclude, as I said in the beginning, we all are talking often about feedback and we struggle with implementing. It's for me, the main problem is we are often organizing workshops about feedbacks and then nothing changes because it should be a new feedback culture that should start from the C-level. So the C-level should understand why the feedback is important, and it should be hierarchy-free and omnidirectional. So you as an employee, you should be free to give positive or even constructive feedback to your manager, to your C-level, to an external person who is working in your teams. It should really be omnidirectional. So it should go for the first time from the C-level to the whole organization, and then only then you might organize a workshop for people how to do it properly. But if you just consider on your teams and don't change the whole culture in the company, it will never work. Of course, if you wish us to help you in implementing the feedback culture, of course, we are always happy to talk, to discuss.